Hey, it's Summer and Candace with the Connected Life Book Club Season 2, studying The Gift of Wonder by Christine Aroney-Sine. This is week 4, covering chapters 7 and 8. If you have not already subscribed, please feel free to do so wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, etc. All the links at connectedlifebookclub.com. It's not too late to join us. This book's been a lot of fun, and this week's no exception. I think I really enjoyed these chapters.
Oh, my word. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's just dive right in.
Yeah,
so
let's do
chapter
it.
7, she talks a lot about nature. And, I mean, we are just... I think that it just hit the nail on the head because she was talking about nature deficient disorder. And when she was specifically mentioning how the schools that are doing the opposite of what a lot of schools in America are doing, where they're actually adding in more recesses, kids are doing better. You know, so it's the schools where recess is being taken away, where kids are just feeling stifled and not learning as well. Their brain isn't able to explore as much. Like, I just thought that was so cool. So the question is, what are some ways you treat your nature deficiency disorder? And when and how do you get out and enjoy creation?
So I love living in Wisconsin because I feel like we have so many opportunities here that I didn't have when I was living in Chicago. Like, I have a garden, sort of. I have a yard. I have a yard. And for me, sometimes it's just getting outside and running around in the grass with the kids or taking my dog for a walk. There's so much more I'd like to do that with schedules I find is more difficult. But when Adrienne and I can get away and go hike Devil's Lake or something like that, that's when I feel closest to God. I've always been like that, feeling closest to God in nature, looking at, his creation, kind of marveling at that. And I loved how she talked about the science of dirt. Because I actually just talked about this on my show. There was another article that I was reading about how there are antidepressant microbes in soil, which is literally why you enjoy getting dirty and kids love playing in the mud. But there's like science behind that.
Wow.
And
awesome.
that God put that into creation. And when we put shoes and socks on and we bundle ourselves up, it's almost like we're guarding ourselves against this really beautiful experience that we had so much more often as kids.
Right. Well, and there is that blend in dirt even of the good and the bad. So even with the bad, the germs, the bacteria that could hurt you, it's still helping us grow our immune system. We kind of talked about that last week with hard things helping us grow our character. And your white blood cells won't know what to do if they're all of a sudden hit by this virus that they weren't prepared for, So having those moments where kid falls down, you rub some dirt in it and move on can actually be genuinely helpful, which I just think is so cool. So this was a little far away from dirt, but a recent thing that I did to get out in nature was skydiving. I was a little closer to the ozone layer than dirt.
You worked your way down to the dirt.
Yes, I made it. I made it
you
to
made
the dirt.
it back to the dirt.
And it was wild, and it was, the whole activity in itself, not my favorite, but a lot of that had to do with like motion sickness stuff. But the opportunity, even on the plane ride up, which is like a slow plane ride up in a tiny plane, being able to see, we were in Beloit, so being able to see all of the farms and the river that comes through the city and like all the beautiful things that just surround that area and see it from a much, much different perspective was so cool. So even though we weren't technically in nature, well, until we got out of the plane, it was still amazing to see God's creation, and to see it from that level almost gave me this, it gave me this minuscule feeling of sometimes we think of God being in the sky above us, and to be looking down, to actually be looking down on the world below, it's like, oh, I'm just so insignificant. I am just so a microorganism in this whole complex world that we live in. And that was like an amazing reality check for myself as well. And I've heard people say that about being in the mountains or being, next to the ocean, to just feel so small. But to know that God still cares about our intricacies of our lives, it's just so significant. It brings you so much closer to God.
It does. I had such an interesting experience just walking the dog that brought that to me. So you say like looking down, you feel so small. I was looking up. I just saw the moon and the clouds and I'm like, you know, and I used to go skydiving, but even just on a plane and you see like you look down, you can't make out individual people.
Right.
You know, how much higher even than that plane is the Lord. And just, he doesn't just see you, but he knows your every thought and he loves you unconditionally. And it's just a great perspective that when we don't get out in the world, we miss. And so I really enjoyed that chapter and it actually inspired me to pull some weeds this weekend. Which, thanks for that, Christine Aroney-Sine. Chapter 8 was also very nature related. It was more looking at the different seasons of the year, like seasons of weather, spring, summer, winter, fall. And it said, so the question is, which spiritual season do you find yourself in now? And do you find yourself in one more often than the others? Which do you experience least? And just by way of recap, they were saying that springtime is the season where we are working furiously. We are definitely a farmer picture, which I think is great for this region of getting out there and planting and tilling up the soil and putting down the compost and weeding and just working for the future return. And for a lot of people, that was the season that they were the most hungry because their stores through the winter had been used up. And so the spring, they're working with this anticipation. The summertime was more of a season of rest. And, you know, the plants are going to do their thing. We can reflect on God. We can look at his beauty and just kind of enjoy ourselves. The fall was the harvest. We're bringing in the bounty. We're feasting with our friends and just rejoicing in God's provision. And in the winter, it's that dark season where the trees go dormant. And everything is waiting for the spring again. And I liked what she said about the winter, if we rush things in that season, those seeds that are ready to bloom but are dormant right now, if we rush it and we're in a winter season, like that could kill the tree if it blooms too early. Right. So which spiritual season would you say you're in now? And are you in one more often than the others?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think as far as like spiritual seasons, obviously every season is important to a certain extent. And I really like that she capitalized on that because occasionally if you are in a winter season or if you are in a fall season where it feels like things are kind of dropping off or you're in this kind of moment of shedding, it can feel lesser than, you know, the season of new growth or, you know, the abundance of summer. But it's also just so important. I'd say right now I'm kind of, I'm either in a winter or a spring. I know that sounds weird, but I think that there are a lot of things that are kind of dormant right now that will be coming soon. But then I'm also kind of working tirelessly on just kind of planting some of those seeds and preparing. Yeah, definitely in a season of preparing and not necessarily harvest right now. So, yeah, what about you?
I would say right now is probably a summer season for us in the sense that, you know, there's not a lot of crazy, stressful toil. It's a good season. I wouldn't say it's a winter where I'm sitting here hoping for the spring, and it's the fall of just the bounty and the harvest. I mean, I feel like we're kind of in that restful season, but what I appreciated about this is that that's okay. And I don't have to feel like, well, I feel like I'm in a good kind of respite place, feeling like I'm failing. Like I should be pushing, I should be working, I should be toiling, I should be doing more, because that comes in its season. And I think as far as being in one more than the others, I feel like there's at least internal pressure for myself to be in that spring mode more. Like I can always be doing more. I always need to be planting more. I need to be doing more. And not always appreciating like I am okay to just observe what God is doing in this season with what I have planted and as he's growing it, and just rest in that for a time. Or in the fall, you know, where you're reaping all that in, and just look at it with gratitude and say, wow, God, thanks, you know, and in appreciating that I guess I kind of in a fall too, because one thing I just talked to Adrienne about was, have you ever realized that this is the moment we're going to look back on years from now as like the best time in our lives?
Oh.
Like, it's so weird to live in that time, like where I'm watching my kids at the age they are and watching our life, and how really there's a lot of rest here. There's a lot of good things happening, and realizing that it's not always going to be like this. So I guess that could be an argument for the fall too, just soaking in God's goodness and his provision, and knowing that things will eventually drop off and it won't always be this good.
Interesting.
So I guess, yeah, the summer, fall. I'm in a mid-September.
Yeah. Well, and I guess in my interpretation of what she was saying, that seems more like summer, just because, I mean, from a life stage perspective, it seems like fall would be your kids graduating, which it's like you're reaping the harvest of all your hard work of parenting them. But then that season of life is also kind of dying off to a certain extent. You know, you have a lot less responsibility sometimes as a parent, and you know, it's not like when they're 2 and 3 and needing you for everything in your life. But I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I mean, I think every season of life is important. We even have, I think, seasons, even in, well, not seasons necessarily, but the way that she's talking about the rhythm of life. We have the rhythm of our daily life and our weekly life too, which I think is really important, because we almost should be experiencing those seasons weekly as we go through our life. You know, we need moments of winter every week, you know, which is almost this like, okay, let's just sit and let something grow.
And everything's dormant.
Exactly. It's almost like a time of rest, where it's like we need to have those different seasons and that different flow throughout our weeks, because man, yeah, things can just pile up so quickly. My husband and I even had like a pretty tense-ish conversation recently, because he's somebody that's go all the time. I mean, he's not only tending to the garden constantly, but he's reaping the harvest, and he's planting new seeds, and everything is constantly going, which leads to a lot of production, a lot of things happening all the time, which can be good, but I can't do that constantly. You know, I can't keep up at that pace. And so we've just kind of had to have these really serious conversations of like, I need a day off. I need alone time. I need a little bit more of that like self-reflection, internal time that, you know, he just needs less of. It's more of like a southern state. And I'm like a hard Wisconsin. You know?
Nice. So what would you say, though, is the season that you struggle finding yourself in more? Like, you're like, there's a definite fall deficiency in my life.
Yeah. I mean, I think I am more of a winter person as far as, you know, just kind of waiting. I mean, it took me till my junior or senior year in high school to bloom. Like, I really had to soak everything in. Just kind of
bloom in what context?
Well, I guess in like the spring summer context of just like of, you know, making the most of your situation, of seeing things come to light, of feeling comfortable, I guess, in a way. And it's just kind of, I'm a slow build. I'm a slow build. I need a lot of that absorption time. And I think spiritually too, like I will kind of up and then I stay steady for a long time before like, okay, and staying steady for a long time. And so that steady plateau time for some people might feel like a lack of growth. But for me, I think I need to just like feel comfortable before I'm ready to move on to the next step. You know, it's not a ladder. It's like the steps going up to the state capitol.
Sure.
It's like a long sidewalk and then a few steps. Then a long sidewalk, then a few steps. There's a lot of metaphors going on right now.
I'm
but
diving with you. I'm following.
I'm a winter sidewalk step in Wisconsin. What are you? I'm just kidding.
Please actually do tell us. We would love that, because, you know, we're doing our book club thing here, but you're a part of that. And so always definitely feel free to respond to these questions with your own comments in the comment section too. Would love it. So Candace, what practice from this week's reading was the most helpful and which was the most difficult?
Yeah, so I actually really liked the leaf bit.
Okay.
Like the go out and find a bunch of leaves and then arrange them and decorate them. And I just thought that was fun because it was something I could totally do in my own backyard. Our lawn goes right up to this woodsy area that is way overgrown. So there is a plethora of different leaves, all different things. And so that was awesome. And so I thought that was really fun because when you start to dig into the intricacies of all these different leaves and what they're created for and why God created them in certain ways, I just thought that one was really, really fun. Let's see. Oh, the seed bombing in episode in chapter 7 at the end with the seed bombing. I think that's a cool idea. I have questions. I have questions, and I'm not convinced that that's for me.
Okay. I haven't done the seed bombing yet.
Yeah.
But the reason that appeals to me so much is because I do have small children that would love to make a mess and create those.
Sure.
My hesitation is, where on earth do I throw these things?
Right.
Like if I was still living in Chicago, like I can picture several places that could use some seed bombs. Now I live in beautiful
Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah, and it's like, okay,
Oregon.
But still, I'm like, all right, well, there's a giant field / park behind our house, which is off limits for this kind of stuff. I'm like, most of the things around us are like
protected,
growing or someone's property.
Yeah.
And like, there's a lot of new builds going on. Would you just bomb like a lot that someone hasn't gotten to yet? I'm just
which is terrible because then they're just going to dig them up anyway.
Yeah. And so that's my thing. Is like, I'm all about making these bombs, which sounds so terrible. And if someone were to listen to that out of context.
It's clay.
Plants, flowers. Okay. I'm not sure where to go. So if you guys actually know somewhere near you that could use some beautiful bombing. Seed bombing with flowers and plants, let me know because me and my kids might, do our part.
Even the fact that she's like, drive by and chuck it out the window. I'm like, girl, you can't do that in 2019. You just cannot. It's got to be a little more
different in Seattle. I have a feeling it's different in Seattle.
All right, I could see that. No, I don't know. I
love the idea of creating those.
Well, and I like the idea of even in your own yard having a more wildflower approach, having a more like local vegetation approach. I think that's really cool, but it doesn't really accomplish the same goal as seed bombing.
Seed bombing the world to make it a more beautiful place.
Yeah, that one was tough for me.
Yeah. Super cute idea, though. If someone has ideas, if you're like, you can seed bomb my backyard, just let me know. That's fine. I'll help you plant flowers. All right. Well, if you have not already subscribed to this podcast, we would love if you would do so. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or you can access the podcast at any time over at connectedlifebookclub.com or through our Facebook page. We are already into week 4, which means we have 2 weeks left.
Yep.
I think we're going to have to pick up the pace. The last couple of podcasts are likely going to cover up to 3 chapters. So if you are trying to plan ahead, just prepare for that. And we are so excited to be entering in the latter half of this book.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to subscribe, and we'll catch you next week.